I'm trying to use words. I'm trying to use words as antidotes to how we usually use words. Or how do you do it? Well, I think that first it's useful. I mean, we have to kind of reprogram ourselves. Now, reprogramming ourselves seems kind of like I'm a certain kind of person, and this is the way I am. I experience myself this way. How can I reprogram myself? And if I'm doing Zazen, is the Zazen a reprogramming? Is the Zazen body not my body, or is the Zazen body a possibility of my body? I said this morning in Zazen, the first period, maybe to try to, how do you field the field? But it's not even a field. I often say the field of mind, but it's not really the field of mind. It's the discovery of the field of mind. There are no entities. There's only probables and possibles. How do you get there? I don't know. It makes a difference. I'm very hesitant to do what I'm just about to do. Oh, what's he about to do? I mean, I'm very much against magical thinking. I'm only interested in evidential thinking. So the world we live in, the only evidential conclusion I can come to, the world we live in is different when there's no intent, in this case, when there's no intention or belief in the mind. Now, how does the mind, it's like, again, whether, for physicists, whether there's an observer of the experiment or there's not an observer, somehow makes a difference. So again, I don't want to use science as a Trojan horse to sneak Buddhism into the West. But there is some kind of surprising overlap conceptually or linguistically, the words that are chosen to kind of like find our way into an experience which is not consciousness. Imagine you were born into a world which has no rules. Like you're thrown into an ocean and you have to sort of like, whoa, well, I have to learn how to swim, I guess. So one of the things I've suggested implicitly or explicitly, suggested we try out is to feel the world as if it's not already created, that it's a participatory event, and you're one of the participants. Now, it's possible to conceptually think this. That's a big step, to be able to conceptually think it and think it often enough. But to begin to repeat it often enough in your own language, your own inner and shared language with others. It's very difficult to do it with our shared language with others because then you feel you're not being compassionate or relating to others. So somehow you have to kind of have the two truths of the shared language with others and the language which is true to your evidential experience. It's a kind of magic trick. I mean, it's kind of... So if you do imagine that you're been thrown into this world in which a generative field finding itself, then you're going to notice that your experience is related to spatiality and invisibility and invisibles in a way that it's the invisibles which make the visible possible. Now, again, I'm just, trying to change our vocabulary here. So you don't do Zazen. You discover Zazen. You don't do anything. You discover. So when you sit down and you think you're going to do Zazen, well, you can take the posture and you can sit a certain way and so forth. But it would be more useful if you told yourself, I'm going to use the posture to discover Zazen. Well, Buddhism assumes something like you can, and wisdom is to recognize that you can reprogram yourself because you are programmed already. If I decide I'm not going to do anything anymore, I'm going to discover actionable probabilities. Well, it's almost exactly the same as if you think you're going to do it. But if you think you're in a happening of probabilities, you think you're in a happening with likely outcomes, still you're this feel of the world as likely feel of the world, which might, instead of referring to self-space and self-connectivity, you find yourself constantly absorbing the context. And what I'm trying to do here is speak about mind. Mind, which reflects the world not as entities, but reflects the world as probabilities to be discovered. I don't know what Zazen is, but I sort of know how to discover it. And every time I discover Zazen, it's different. So in a way, if I kind of half joking when I say, think of yourself as a wiring diagram, but it might have more dynamic in it, more discovery in it, than thinking of yourself as a body or a person, etc. So if every time you sit down, and sitting down is a good chance because you can be more purely observant if you're not caught up in discursive conceptual thinking. So how do you discover Zazen? Well, one way is to bring attentionality to the breath, which then turn into kind of wires. You're making them wires. And the kind of attentionality you bring to the threads of breath, the physicality of, as I say always, and supposedly historical Buddha said, the physicality of the inhale and the physicality of the exhale, you kind of activate some kind of energy or potency. It's amazing. The mind can activate a kind of potency by feeling the breath as wires which begin a process of discovery, where you begin to feel that the zazen is a subtle body that inhabits your body. It's like this, a little bit like the shift when you're no longer breathing breathes you. I think that's pretty common, but a little more subtle is the body begins to body you. There's no one, and when that happens, this idea of self-continuity, etc., is gone, because the body begins to body the you-ness, the me-ness. The body begins to body bodiness, and that's not exactly you. Just letting the context of the world absorb you. Letting the context of the world disturb you. Letting the context of the world discover you. That which has not yet happened is already changing. That's only imaginable in a world of probabilities. Because this probability is inseparable from that probability, and you're beginning to swim in a field of probabilities. And through Zazen, you have an experience which grounds you, but you don't know exactly who is swimming in this field of probabilities. We could say that's an approach to a definition or an exclusion of other possibilities of mind. Thank you very much. Feel the world that it's a participatory event, and you're one of the participants. Buddhism assumes something like, and wisdom is to recognize that you can reprogram yourself because you are programmed. Think of yourself as a wiring diagram, but it might have more dynamic in it, more discovery in it, than thinking of yourself as a body or a person, etc. And what I'm trying to do here is speak about mind. Mind, which reflects the world not as entities, but reflects the world as probabilities to be discovered. You don't do zazen. You discover zazen. You don't do anything. You discover. So when you sit down and you think you're going to do zazen, well, you can take the posture and you can sit a certain way and so forth. But it would be more useful if you told yourself, I'm going to use the posture to discover zazen.